Okay? You ever think your worst enemy could walk right into your life, destroy everything you love, and still have the nerve to smile at you in court? My name's Daniel, and the woman who burned my house to the ground, my home, my memories, my life, wasn't some stranger. She was my neighbor, the president of the HOA, the same person who used to wave at me every morning like she didn't have a storm brewing behind that perfect suburban smile. But what she didn't know is that the fire she started lit something inside me too. And it wasn't rage, it was resolve. The neighborhood of Willow Bend looked like something out of a real estate brochure. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, and the faint smell of freshly cut grass. I bought my home there after years of saving, scraping, and hustling double shifts. It wasn't just a house, it was the dream. My late wife Anna used to say, "Home is where you finally exhale." For the first time since losing her, I could finally breathe again. When I moved in, everyone seemed friendly enough. The kids played on the cul-de-sac. The retirees waved from their porches. But there was one person you couldn't miss. Karen Wexler, president of the HOA. Platinum blonde hair, pastel cardigans, clipboard permanently attached to her hand. She had that kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The type that said, "I know something you don't." At first, it was little things. A letter about my grass being quarter-inch too high. Then a warning about my garbage cans being visible from the street. I brushed it off. Rules were rules, right? But it got weirder. She once left a note on my door about the tone of my front porch light. Apparently, warm yellow was not in accordance with neighborhood standards. I laughed it off, but that laughter started to fade when she began showing up uninvited. I remember one afternoon vividly. I was repainting the shutters when she walked right up my driveway like she owned the place. "Daniel," she said, squinting, "that color looks bold. You did submit the paint sample to the HOA, right?" I wiped my hands on a rag. "It's navy blue, Karen, the same color it's always been." She smiled, tight, controlled. I'll have to check the records." I thought it was just her being nosy. But over the months, it turned into something darker. She started taking photos of my house from her car. I'd catch her jotting notes on her clipboard while pretending to walk her dog. Once, I came home to find my mailbox smashed, and a letter from the HOA the next day saying it didn't meet aesthetic guidelines. The last straw came when she showed up during a neighborhood meeting and accused me of violating multiple community standards, claiming my fence was 2 inches over the line. 2 inches. I told her I'd fix it, but she just smiled and said, "Some people don't belong in Willow Bend." Something in her tone sent a chill through me. It wasn't about fences or lawns anymore. It was personal. The fire happened 2 weeks later. It was a quiet Friday night. I'd just made a cup of tea, planning to watch a movie. Then, boom, a sound like the world tearing open. I ran outside, and the air was thick with smoke. My house, my home, was in flames. The roof collapsed like paper. I remember screaming for help, but all I could do was watch as everything I owned turned to ash. The fire trucks came, but it was too late. The neighbors stood on their lawns, some crying, others filming. And there she was, Karen, standing across the street, arms folded, expression unreadable. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. The investigators called it suspicious. They found accelerant near the garage and security footage showing someone in a hoodie near my driveway just before the explosion. Weeks later, the police came to me with news that stopped my heart. Karen Wexler had been arrested. She tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that she was framed, but the evidence was clear. She'd been angry about the fence dispute, and they found receipts for gasoline and lighters in her car. The same brand the fire marshal identified at the scene. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I felt was hollow. My home was gone. My memories, my wife's photos, her favorite chair, the little notes she'd leave me, gone. But I promised myself one thing. I'd be in that courtroom when they sentenced her. I needed to see the woman who'd destroyed everything I loved face justice. I didn't know it then, but that courtroom would change everything. The courtroom smelled like stale coffee and paper, a strange mix of bureaucracy and broken lives. I sat in the front row, my hands trembling around a worn photo of my wife. The same photo I used to keep on the mantel, before the fire turned it all to cinders. Around me, the room buzzed with whispers. People leaned in to see the infamous HOA arsonist. And then she walked in, Karen Wexler. No pastel cardigan this time, no clipboard, just a plain gray suit that somehow still screamed arrogance. Her hair, once perfectly coiffed, hung limp around her face. But her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were still the same. She glanced around the room, scanning faces until her gaze landed on me. And then, she smiled. It wasn't a full smile. Just the faintest twitch of her lips, like she knew exactly what she'd done and wasn't sorry for a second of it. My stomach turned. The prosecutor stood first, laying out the case with quiet precision. Surveillance footage. Gasoline purchases. A witness who'd seen Karen's car near my house that night, and then came the fire marshal's report. Clear evidence of deliberate arson. When they asked me to testify, my knees nearly gave out. I walked up to the stand, heart hammering, palms sweating. The oath felt heavy in my mouth. "Mr. Reed," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court how this incident affected your life?" I looked at Karen. She sat still, hands folded, like a queen waiting for her servant to finish speaking. "I lost everything," I said, my voice breaking before I could stop it. "My home. My wife's things. The last pieces of her I had. Every photo, every note, every memory. It's all ash now. Because someone decided to play God with a match." The courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. I could feel my anger boiling beneath my grief, but I kept my tone steady. "I worked my whole life for that house," I continued. "And she," I gestured toward Karen, "spent months tormenting me over fence heights and paint colors. I thought it was just control issues. I never imagined she'd take it this far." When I stepped down from the stand, I felt drained, like every word had taken a piece of me. Then it was her turn. Her lawyer painted her as a misunderstood woman under immense neighborhood stress. A model citizen, they said, overwhelmed by community duties. And when Karen finally spoke, her voice was soft, trembling, like she was the victim. "I didn't mean for anything to happen," she said, eyes wide with false tears. "I was angry. I made mistakes. But I didn't start that fire." Lies. I could see it in her face. The same mask she wore when she'd tell me my grass was too high or my shutters too bright. She'd always been good at pretending. The judge listened quietly. And when he finally spoke, his tone was heavy with controlled anger. "Mrs. Wexler," he said, "you terrorized a man in his own neighborhood. You abused your authority, and your actions nearly cost a life. You have shown no remorse. Therefore, this court sentences you to 12 years in state prison." The gavel hit like thunder. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt something. But as the guards led her away, I only felt empty. She turned once more before disappearing behind the door, eyes meeting mine. For a split second, I saw something crack. A flicker of regret, or maybe just disbelief that she'd finally lost. Either way, it was over. Months passed. Insurance barely covered the loss, but neighbors came together in ways I never expected. The same people who once stayed silent under Karen's rule showed up with casseroles, hammers, and open hearts. We rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, but together. The day my new house was finished, I stood in the doorway, the smell of fresh paint mixing with sawdust. It wasn't the same, but it was a beginning. I placed a new photo of Anna on the mantel. A reprint from a digital backup my sister had kept. Her smile was brighter than I remembered. That night I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The same way I had on that terrible night. But this time, there was peace. The stars looked clearer. The world felt lighter. I realized something then. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about setting yourself free. Karen would spend years behind bars, trapped in the walls she built out of pride and hatred. But me, I was done being trapped by anger. So when I got a letter from her 6 months later, postmarked from the correctional facility, I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single page. I don't expect forgiveness, but I see now that I destroyed more than your home. I destroyed what I hated in myself. I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I read it twice. Then I set it down, exiled, and looked out at the home I'd rebuilt. Not just in wood and brick, but in spirit. Because sometimes, the fire that destroys you isn't the end. It's the spark that rebuilds you stronger than before. And that's the truth I carry now. You can burn down my house, but you'll never burn down my hope.